Good evening. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It's our Monday, June 10th, 2024 meeting. If we'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce the members of the public that are here this evening. To my immediate right is Commission Member James Fitzsimmons. Next to Jim is Commission Member Jeff Cohan, and next to Jeff is Brian Rivard, who is a alternate on the commission. To my immediate left is Steve Allenson, Commission Member, and to Steve's left is David Parent, an alternate, and next to Dave is Joseph Sanders, also an alternate on the commission. And with the staff, the lower table is Cheryl Ann Tubby, who is our recording secretary. Next to Cheryl Ann is Kevin Pagini, our town planner, and I'm Jim Seichter, the chairperson of the commission. Our first order of business now would be to consider for approval the minutes of our May 13th, 2024 meeting. Any commission members that would like to make any comments on the minutes, any additions, corrections? If none, I'd entertain a motion on the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of our May 13th, 2024 meeting as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Parent. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
And we have, I believe, Mr. Fitzsimmons and Mr. Allenson has abstained. Tough getting that one out. Also, as far as approval of minutes, I know, Mr. Pacini, last month we did not take any action. I believe it was on the April 8th minutes. So for next month, if you would include those on the agenda also. With that, it brings us to our first item on our agenda, which is a public hearing. It's a special permit for electric vehicle charging facility retail, Gem Property Group LLC / 1 Miles Drive. The applicant would please come forward to begin preparing for the presentation. And Mr. Allenson, if you would please read the legal notice as well as note all correspondence for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 406-24, special permit request from Gem Property Group LLC at 1 Miles Drive to construct an electric vehicle charging facility with accessory retail, Gem Property Group LLC, WI Watershed Interchange District. We have a set of revised site plans, data receipt June 4th, 2024.
There's also an initial traffic study. That's the revised one. This was revised. We have the first. Mr. Pagini, the original traffic study that we received, what's the date of that, please? Because I know we have two revised ones, correct?
Yes.
You please give us the date of the first one. Does any commission member have that with them? Just so we can note it for the record.
The original is May 8th. The second revision is June 3rd.
Yeah, we have that. I think it was just the May 8th date.
Traffic study from May 8th, 2024. Inspection report from the Wallingford Fire Department, date of inspection 5/17/24. Revised traffic study dated June 3rd, 2024. Memorandum to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, from Aaron O'Hare, Environmental Planner, dated June 6th, 2024. Stormwater and Operations and Maintenance Manual, dated April 24th, 2024. A drainage report dated April 1st, 2024. A memorandum from the Department of Engineering to the Planning and Zoning Commission dated June 6th, 2024. An interoffice memorandum from Scott Shipman, Senior Engineer, to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated June 6th, 2024. Email correspondence. The salient part is from Robert DeMeo, dated June 6th, 2024. Email correspondence from Bill Stuckey to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated June 10th, 2024. A comparative architectural design exhibit. A document called Revised Traffic Analysis, dated June 10th, 2024. A memorandum from the Department of Engineering, the Planning and Zoning Commission, dated June 10th, 2024. And a revised traffic analysis dated June 10th, 2024. I believe that is all.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Before we get started, as Mr. Benoit is not here, I'd ask if Mr. Parent, if you would, for this application and the rest of the evening, if you would sit in for Mr. Benoit.
With pleasure, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. With that, if the applicant would please introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Verna, 26 Mapleview Road. I represent Gem Property Group.
David Sullivan. I'm a professional engineer and the head of the Transportation Planning Group for SLR.
And Tom Daly, also was SLR professional engineer, and if it's okay, I'll come to the podium and give the presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, once again, for the record, Tom Daly with SLR. We're pleased to be before you this evening with what we found to be a very exciting project. It's actually got a lot of people excited in our office as really one of the first that we've had a chance to work on. But it's an EV charging facility. And that's, so if just to existing conditions to orientate you, we have Route 68 located at the north. We have Miles Drive located on our eastern border, and it's a rectangular piece. It's a remnant piece. As you know, most of the pieces out in this area are much larger pieces. This is a piece that's been around for a very long time. Initially, it was two smaller pieces, and it's been combined into one over the years. It's about 2 acres, generally level, very flat. Today, it's out there. There's some small wooded, brushy area along the perimeter, but ultimately it's just a meadow. It's an open meadow. Topographically, it slopes from north to south, but very flat. Just to give you it does drop down about 5 feet from Route 68 down into the first portion of the site. The parcel is located within your watershed interchange zone. And that requires, as you know, with your regulation, we have to take a really close look at water quality in this particular zone. But because this site is so small and it's so, and actually the zone has changed on this piece many over the years. So a variance was given to this property back in the 80s, which basically almost essentially grandfathered it into the previous zone before that. But the application before you this evening tonight is for a 36, well, it's actually about 38 EV parking spaces. So this is really, I guess, the gas station of the future. This is where your EV vehicles will come and get charged. As you know, the infrastructure, state of Connecticut has put a large focus on building out that infrastructure. Today, your EV parking spaces are simply just sprinkled in smaller areas. This is actually what we believe is, and so does the applicant, the future. And we actually did pull in our experts from over in the UK because that's really what they're doing already over there. And we believe that this location adjacent to 91 is just a perfect fit. But the way the design is, we have two entrances off of Miles Drive. Those will both be full access in and out. And that was also important to make sure that we could get the fire truck around. So you should have a letter in your file that the fire marshal is satisfied. We had a great dialogue, and we were able to do that. The central corridor will be covered EV charging stations with a canopy over them. I think the canopy would be pretty similar to what when you go to a rental car place. Hertz has all those canopies to get you out of the cover. We'll have a central sidewalk that allows you to come up through while your car is charging. You're able to come up through here and come into the 3,000 square foot retail space. In addition to that, your regulations require some additional overflow parking that is located here and to support the retail space. And then also with the new code, you also have to have handicap accessible EV spaces. So that came out about a year ago or so. So even on any project, you have to have handicapped accessible EV parking. So we have located that right in the same bay as the existing EV park or the proposed EV parking. So yeah, you'll be able to come into here, park your car, charge it. There'll be this central, you could either wait in your car underneath the canopy or come up into the retail space. The retail building here is about 3,000 square feet. It's approximately 60 by 50. And then adjacent to that, we have a small outdoor patio. As you know, it takes a little bit longer to charge a EV, so you have a little time on your hands. Go over here, check some emails, and check in. We have proposed a robust planting plan along the perimeter. We're proposing to plant 43 trees and 161 shrubs along here to create a really nice vegetated buffer. In addition to that, we have a large amount of foundation planting. So in addition, we are, I think, under your underlying zone, you permit about, I think, the coverage calculation, we're below that. I think it's around 50%. As I said, stormwater management is really important in this zone. It's your aquifer protection zone. We worked very closely with your water department. They've reviewed all the plans. We had actually quite a few back and forth with them and in your engineering department. But we have a small stormwater basin in the front of the property, but our primary basin is at the rear of the property where we slope down here. Your regulations require to have both a sand filter and a stormwater basin, so we're providing both water quality and quantity mitigation to that. We simply have a high level overflow, but we work very closely. You have your water department has very specific regulations, and we went back and forth. Some of those revisions in the drainage plan, frankly, were just some small refinements on how the water got its way through the stormwater basin here. You should have in your packet, and it's my understanding that you should have sign-offs where fire, the water and sewer department, and the engineering department are satisfied with the revisions. And we worked with all three of those departments throughout the process, and that's represented with many of the revisions you're seeing. With that, that's the general overview of the application, and then I think Dave's going to speak to the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Allison, you mentioned that few traffic studies that have been presented, and we have reanalyzed this a few times, each time getting progressively and more conservative. So our initial estimate when we first started this project, what was evident is it is a new land use around here. So we looked for, first, industry data that may have been developed. We usually use the Institute of Transportation Engineers publication, Trip Generation. There's no land use for electric vehicle charging stations. So then we said, well, let's try to get some more on-the-ground data. So we did a couple of things. One, we reached out to Connecticut Department of Transportation to see if they had information that they've been using, and the response we got from ConnDOT is, if it's not 100 or more EV stations, we would consider it negligible, so we wouldn't even consider it a traffic generator. That's anecdotal, of course. and it was not very useful for what we were doing. One of my colleagues he lives in Delaware, and he knew of a charging station in Delaware, a different size. So we did some counts there to see what type of traffic that's generating. So we had that as background data. And then we prorated that information at that time for the amount of EV stations that are being proposed here. And that initial estimate, adding on some for the convenience or the retail, we came up with estimates during the peak hours of between 15 and 25 vehicle trips. We then talked to our colleagues in the UK, as Tom mentioned. This is, I won't say old technology, but it's certainly tested technology there. And we bounced off our process and our methodology, and they were comfortable with that. So yeah, that's probably about the numbers you should be looking at. So with that being said, we conducted traffic counts at Route 68 and Miles Drive, and we did our analyses, level of service analyses, and we found that with that level of traffic, there was no impact on the intersection. That report was the first one submitted. I think the date of that was May 8th, I believe. That was reviewed by your staff, and the request came that, I understand that this is a land use that's relatively new, but is there anything in ITE that has some published information that we could relate this to? And the obvious thing that came to mind was, well, how about a gas station? So we took what would typically be a relatively average-sized gas station with 8 vehicle fueling positions, and we looked at what that would generate as an 8 vehicle fueling position gas station with a convenience store. And then we said, well, let's look at the service rate of the EV versus the gas stations, and it's about 20 to 30 minutes for EV, where it's probably around 5 minutes or so to fuel your car. So we reduced that data and were able to come up with an estimate, and that estimate, it increased, I'd say maybe not quite double, 30 to 40 some odd trips. And then we reanalyzed that, and once again, the levels of service at the intersection remain generally level of service B or better, but in particular, each one of the movements stays exactly the same in terms of level of service. So after that scenario was vetted, and that was our June 3rd report, as late as on Friday and again this morning, we've had more conversations, and then we looked at it one more way. So we said, okay, let's look at it starting with the 38 vehicle positions, the electric vehicle positions, and factor it down to a number for gas stations. So rather than starting with gas station and factoring it up for the number of vehicle positions, we did it the opposite way. It ends up basically tripling the amount of traffic by just changing the methodology of how we looked at it. So with the tripled traffic, we then went through the same machinations and reanalyzed everything, and that's the letter that's dated today, which is the 10th. And that letter shows that the level of service, again, is not impacted on Route 68. So we've done 3 levels of analysis. We believe the first one is probably where in the ballpark we'll end up. But again, it's a new technology, so, could we be slightly off on that? Certainly. But the third analysis we did, we feel, is conservative enough that we're highly unlikely to get to those levels of traffic for this type of facility. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's the reason you have 3 studies.
Get used to where the new buttons are. Any commission members with questions for the applicant at this point in time? Anybody? Okay, I can take it you'd like to continue. Well, first of all, I appreciate you doing the third one. I was the guy who said, when I looked at it, I just thought it should look more like, if it's a gas station, if you have so many pumps, you have so many, charging stations for, for the EVs. So I appreciate you doing that.
Well,
I didn't think it was going to hit the 100, but I certainly wanted to use that methodology. It may very well be the most conservative. As you indicated, it's new technology. There's not very many around. I do have a question. When you mentioned you had some information from an individual in Delaware, how large was that charging station?
It had 10 charging stations.
10 charging stations. And I know and I'm not sure if 38 charging stations, if that's a lot or a little. I know that, the government is looking for something like 500,000 charging stations by, 2030. Any idea of what size they envision those stations to be from the number of charging units in each station?
It's hard to say. This one is kind of tucked off of the interstate, so I think this is probably about as large as you would see in this type of facility. This is, I would say this is, in the future, you'll probably see a bunch this size, like gas stations are now. I think the larger ones, they'll probably make them more convenient. For instance, you have the rest area between the interchanges. I could see where that becomes maybe the right size where the truck parking is, for example. That whole thing may be charging stations. So I think it's a matter of how convenient, how much traffic is going by it, and if you.
So I guess the answer is right now there's not really a specific model or let's call it a right size that may be looked at. It would really depend upon location that it may or may not go into in the future.
Yes, and it's in our industry, we're following this very closely because we think it's an upcoming technology and has a lot of implications for what we do, both from a traffic standpoint, but also from clean energy and sustainability. So we're following it very closely, and there are several different groups out there that have different thoughts of how to do this, whether it's a lot of smaller ones or several bigger ones. But I think you probably need a combination of both, so that the long haul trips have something convenient, but when you're putting around town and you don't have your own charging in your house, that you have somewhere that you can go that's local and convenient.
Sure. And I suspect when we talk about having charging in a house, that's great if people have it, but we know that there's a large number of people that own a condo, rent, what have you, and
Precisely.
they're not going to put a cord outside their window to charge their vehicle.
Right.
And when we were consulting our colleagues in the UK, this was consistent with the sizes they were seeing over there when they were near the highway.
All right, I take it you still have more of your presentation?
Not really, but,
Well, let's talk about the retail building.
okay. Well, first of all, I just want
Because
to.
you mentioned a convenience store.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to two other points.
Sure.
If you remember when we amended the WI, we had a limit on the size of the trucks. So we're not getting 18-wheelers. I think, what was the tonnage or?
26,000 pounds.
Right, 26,000 pounds, which is a number that you use in your regulations currently. And we also committed to not putting a drive-through, which eliminates a lot of your worries of certain types of retail stores, because they require drive-throughs, most of them. The building is 3,000 square feet, and the reason we're calling it a convenience center is because it is for convenience. We anticipate that there'll be restrooms, that there'll be some type of coffee bar, tea bar, snacks, to-go items, ice cream, candy, gum, batteries, chargers, things that people need for convenience that they may need while they're charging their car. We anticipate that the people that will be using the convenience area, because of the time it takes to charge electric vehicles, 20 minutes, that they need a place to go, and it has to be convenient. So that's where the word convenience comes in. I just want to give you some perspective on the building size. This is the maximum use that we felt was great for the site. Currently, we don't have necessarily a tenant. We don't have a company that wants to manage the EV stations. We don't have a tenant for the building. We may get a tenant that only wants 1,000 feet, that they just want restrooms and a couple vending machines. So what we asked our professional engineers to do is put the maximum, and then we could always go smaller, and create the site plan so it was maxed out. And I think that's basically what you did. Just for perspective, is everyone aware of community pool
What's community pool?
in Wallingford?
Just kidding you, Liz.
Okay. So across the street from Community Pool is a building, American Renal Associates. And that building size is 56 wide, but 178 long, right? The frontage of the building is 178. So for perspective, what is shown on the site plan is 50-foot wide, so basically the same width, but 60 feet of frontage. So you can imagine that we're not going to be able to fit a ton in a 3,000 square foot buildings once you consider handicap bathrooms, a little waiting area where people could recharge phones and computers. They're going to be there 20 minutes, so we want to make it convenient and hospitable where they can get some amenities while using facilities. So I also met with the town planner today in order to avoid confusion of what we foresee, but clearly I may not be here when a tenant comes in. Who knows what could happen. So in order to protect that corner that's very important to Wallingford, we agreed that there would be administrative architectural review of the exterior of the building, and I provided you with some things that I would not like to see and things that I would like to see. Basically craftsman style, rustic, rural, or farm-like. So I think that if the building design, the architectural building design, is designed in a way that will fit in with the community and the other buildings along Route 68. To the left, there's Joe's Garden Center. I think it'll be very attractive to Wallingford, provide the convenience and amenities that the people who are using the charging facility need. And that's why we call it convenience center, because it's actually a category that we can relate to. Engineers use it for various data.
Thank you. Commission members, any questions on that? I guess I do. I take it then, when we talk convenience, we're not necessarily talking about, because the way you were describing, I said, that's a pretty good idea. It's not what you consider more of what we see a convenience store at a gas station, where we're selling everything and anything, to a very large degree. I mean, is that pretty much fair to say?
Well, give me an example of what you're thinking of.
Well, what I'm thinking of is a little bit what you were talking about.
Right.
Where you're, well, first of all, franchises, I would say I wouldn't want a franchise in there, because whether or not it was a charging station or something, I don't think that we would want, and I know in the past we hadn't wanted in, in that particular area, first retail to begin with, and then also a freestanding restaurant. So to me, a franchise wouldn't fit for me. That's just my opinion. But as far as what you're
So
describing.
like a franchise like a Dunkin' or?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the site would probably, first of all, we didn't calculate the traffic for
Yeah,
that
no, I
use.
understand.
Yeah.
But what you're describing is, sure, someone's coming in there, and they're primarily going there not for the, quote, convenience, as we
Correct.
see at some convenience stores, even with gas stations. They're going there, they're charging their vehicle. It's going to take whatever it is, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They have a spot where they can, perhaps, plug in their computer, do whatever, do some work, go out. If it's a nice day, go out on that little plaza you have there. Yeah, they can get a cup of coffee, get maybe something light to eat. And when you said as far as some of the other ancillary things, I need batteries, I need a charger, those types of things, rather than kind of what we see at some of the convenience stores, when you can go in there, you can buy your soda, your milk, your this, your that, and there's a whole line of stuff that becomes more of what I would call, a convenience store, which I think is a little bit different than what you would describe, just what,
Right.
what you're viewing this as. And I guess that's my general take on it.
So I guess I would compare it to along the Merritt, there are convenience stops, right? Right now, they're gas, but you don't go there to buy a gallon of milk. You go there to get a cup of coffee with
Yeah,
milk.
exactly.
Yeah, so that's what we imagine. But, in fairness, I can't, because we don't have a specific tenant, if one tenant wants to sell, for example, there's a convenience store up north in New York, and they sell milk because they have a dairy farm, and they do sell a gallon of milk. So I can't sit there and try to find someone for the space. We're in the rental business. That's our job. That's what we do. And say, well, you could sell this. I can't have a 100-item list of saying you could sell this, and you could not sell that. What our goal is to make it a convenience store for the charging vehicles. That's who's going to use it. I don't think someone from around, I don't think someone's going to drive there to go get milk. I don't know. Maybe there's another terminology for it in ITE.
Yeah, to give you a little perspective, the convenience stores nowadays, the Cumberland Farms of the world and things like that, are twice this size. So this is not that. This is, the old style convenience stores that you used to see in gas stations. They might have a cooler with refrigerated products, but they don't have a whole wall. They don't have a bar selling hot dogs. They don't have a donut shop in the back corner. So it's a completely different, it's almost the old model instead of the new model, if that makes any sense. So it's really, I guess, the way I understand it is the ancillary use is the convenience store, as opposed to the gas being the ancillary use for some of these bigger convenience stores.
Yes, to me, I think that's really the challenge, because candidly, if you wanted to put a convenience store there, it would never, I don't believe it would be approved, it just wouldn't fit in.
Right.
And I get that there's a need for some type of service to be provided to people that are there, because again, it's different than a gas station. A gas station, you come in, you pump your gas in 5-10 minutes, and you're out. In this particular, and you probably have, again, no interest in doing much than just pumping the gas, hopping in your car. We're here, you're going to plug your car in for 20-30 minutes. You just don't want to sit in your car and do nothing. You'd like to have some convenience. But again, I'm just somewhat conscious. I certainly wouldn't want to see any kind of a franchise in there, because I just don't think that works. But again, I'm just one person. There's other commission members. I know our staff probably has some comments, and I'm sure there's some comments from the public. But is it fair to say that that's kind of wrapped up your presentation and
Let me just see. Well, I think we responsibly looked at the traffic issue. SLR was very responsive in modifying and looking, because I know there's members of the public that are concerned about the technology, expediting the charging. So we really looked at it in a conservative way, and I just hope the commission notes that we're trying to be responsible about this use for a multitude of reasons. One, primarily because it is probably the first in Connecticut, so it's going to set a standard for a lot of different people who would like to build something like this. And other than that, I compared the building size, and no, that's it. I think that concludes our presentation. We may have some comments after you ask questions or after the public speaks.
Okay, thank you. Again, before I go out to Mr. Pagini and the public, any commission members with anything? Mr. Rivard.
Button works. That's good. New technology. Thank you for the presentation. And I did want to say thank you for, I'll say, doing kind of a margin assessment on the traffic study because of folks' concerns. So I think I heard you mention it's up 4x relative to before. And I also heard you say this is probably a first in Connecticut, certainly probably across the I-91 corridor, which could be a good thing to think about. Do you feel 4x is sufficient margin for the traffic? If you think about that, you realize it's a first, and EV people, I was one until I had an unfortunate accident with one of my EV cars. We won't go into that. But we were always in search of convenient charging. So I think, from my perspective, that's a good thing. But I also think you could have unanticipated surges in the traffic, which I think is maybe what's concerning folks. Do you think 4x is enough based on all the research you've done?
Well, the short answer is yes, but you do bring up a good point. But there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg here as well, and this is kind of industry-wide for the EVs, is, the growth of the vehicles is underway, but it's stunted a little bit by the ability to have the charging stations. So, right now, we're probably not going to get these unbelievable surges because there just aren't enough of the vehicles out there. And as there becomes more and more vehicles, let's say, Wallingford is ahead of the curve, and all of a sudden you're selling more EVs on
Out on the auto mile,
Auto
right?
Row. And, because you have the EV stations, but the market will adjust to that. This may be the first, but it certainly won't be the only. How quickly they ramp up will be driven by the market. So I think there'll be some surge initially, I would think. There's going to be also the nuance of, did you hear about that? Let's try it out. But it still has to fit into your trip. So I think, I think 4X is certainly enough factor of safety in here.
Thank you. And then,
I mean, theoretically, just one more point, even if all of the charging stations were done at once, that's, 76 charges. If they all came at once, stayed a half hour, all left at once, and the next group all came. Because it's not the type of thing where folks are going to come like a gas station and you're going to sit in your car and wait 25 minutes or a half hour while the next guy's charging. So the facility itself will throttle some of that.
thank you. One more question, if it's okay. Just maybe it's a comment. Personally, I appreciate the addition of tree-lined streets. I know it's a meadow now, so anytime we can add trees, agriculture, that's good. And I also noted the entryway here on Miles is leaves a small amount of the visible frontage on 68 when you're coming across, and I think that's actually good if you stick to this kind of architectural style. I think it could fit in with the right exterior. Aside from the comments about convenience and what might go in retail wise, I appreciate the thought there.
Thank you. Other commission members? Mr. Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just to follow along the lines of, traffic, I assume because this station is in Wallingford that the charging rates are going to be based on the Wallingford electric rates. I don't know if there's any other type of, standardized pricing that, doesn't take into account our local electric rates. That being said, I could see cars from, neighboring towns coming in to take advantage of our lower electric rates. And again, I have no idea how you're going to price this, but I'm assuming it's going to be lower because, our lower electric rates. So, there may be a little more traffic than maybe expected. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know, but I just wanted to bring that up. Secondly, I think that I looked at the placement of the building, and I'm still going back and forth in my own mind whether or not it makes more sense to have that building on the south side and not directly on 68, because you're going to get the back side of that building on 68. So I don't know if there was any consideration to moving it to the back of the lot. Again, I just wanted to bring it up. I haven't decided in my own mind what makes better sense.
No, we thought about that, and we discussed it internally quite a bit. We felt that it was better to screen where the EV chargers were from 68. Secondly, the back of the building, or the side facing Route 68, has to look as if it is the front of the building, per your regulation. So it will be built. If you notice on the plan, there's a sidewalk, actually.
Yeah.
So it will be built as if it's not going to look like a back of a building.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's a good point. Thank you.
And my last question is, what kind of fire suppression is built into this? How does that work?
You're talking about for the EV chargers?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. Obviously, when a building permit is pulled, they'll have to conform to code.
I know the fire marshal signed off, he can get his fire trucks in there, but, typical gas stations have the halon, I guess, that comes down from the overhangs. So, I'm, okay with this. I'm just wondering what we need to do to, make sure it does come up to code when it does get built. So that'd be an outstanding question I would have.
I think that has to be addressed with the building department upon application of the building.
Yeah, and I think that is something, whatever the architect determines it to be code. I would note that we actually have the luxury of 2 hydrants along the frontage, so we have one at the top and one at the bottom, and it's a large water main in there. So we have good infrastructure to support that need. But it's a good question. It's whatever the architect is going to have to figure out what the code says is required there.
Yeah, when you say water and batteries, I'm
Doesn't work.
I don't know, yeah.
No,
So,
Yeah.
so anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you,
all
Mr.
set.
Cohen. Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you. Just a couple questions to follow up on some questions from Commissioner Cohen. So to go back to the building itself, and the front of the building is facing the pumps. Is that correct? Or the stations?
The access into the building,
Okay.
correct.
Because you cited our regs. Our regs require the building orientation to be facing the road. So the road, the address is Miles Drive. So can the building, I know it's not, we're not seeing any architecturals, can the frontage be facing Miles Drive?
So can you repeat that again?
Yeah, I mean, if you take the way the building is, our reg, because you talked about, you said our reg, so we don't want to see the back of the building facing 68, and our reg requires that the building be oriented to face the front of the road.
So I guess we determined the frontage would be on 68.
No, it's because I could chime in here. The reg requires that the front faces a thoroughfare, and 68 is a thoroughfare, and Miles Drive is not. So it has to face 68.
That's what it was.
Okay. All right, yeah. All right. And then the other question, forgive me, I know two commissioners up here have cars like this, or had cars like this. Can someone from your group walk me through the process? Because I know Commissioner Cohen was asking about the charges. Like, I'm envisioning, this morning I go to Cumberland Farms to get coffee and gas, okay? So I used the pump and then I went inside. Is there an attendant necessary when you're doing an EV charging? Or is it's all self-serve? Could you just walk me through that? Because it would address the issue of related to the pricing. I mean, would a different price be charged at this EV station versus I went to another EV station? Is it standard pricing?
I don't think it is standard pricing, but in terms of self-serve, so it'd be probably similar to if you go along the I-95 rest stop, right? They'll have a few over there. You self-serve. Most people plug in, they'll go in and get a cup of coffee, or they sit in their car, is what I've seen. And I think they have different models out there. I think one might be a Tesla, one might be more of a private. I think I don't know about the pricing. I assume it's still a lot cheaper than gas. That's why people are doing it. But I don't know how the pricing is. But I assume you must have an account. And
I think each company does it differently, but usually they are self-serve. So it would require someone to park. Maybe someone with an EV can chime in and let us know. But there are many companies, so they would determine the price. And we haven't gotten, we are not going to be managing the EV portion of it, even though I would love to learn that whole aspect and learn another business. I think it's out of our wheelhouse. So pricing, I can't help you with that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, thank you. I'm just trying to understand trying to connect the dots between the traffic, first in Connecticut that has this type, and again, as Commissioner Cohen talked about people coming in from another town. I mean, I potentially would get gas at BJ's knowing that it might be cheaper in town versus the Shell station next door where it's 25 cents more a gallon. So it relates to the traffic. So I just, not knowing enough of the industry, so traffic, so it's somewhat standard, but there is a difference in.
There is variation that I've
variation in
noted.
Price. And then the building, and maybe this question should be directed to the town planner. The idea, if I could, Kevin, quoting Mr. You said the proposed building shall be a welcome center concept and not a convenience store concept.
So we had a bunch of discussions back and forth, and I guess it was more so that it was more of a welcome center that had, maybe some coffee, maybe some small retail items, maybe some packaged goods, and had, kind of like photos and whatnot that kind of showcased the town. It was, but then I had more discussions with the applicant. She explained to me that someone else would have to be running this. So I know the idea is good, but does it work in reality? So I think, we had discussions, kind of found a middle ground, I would think, but, unless the commission sees differently.
Okay, I guess I'm just looking for clarification, because if it's a first in Connecticut, and I know I've seen something similar down in Pennsylvania where they took an old bank building and converted it, and so the drive-in teller windows became several EV stations. So conceptually, I could visualize this. It's a unique corner and on a very busy road in Wallingford. So conceptually, I'm with it. I think that the question is the look, because how would this not look like a gas station, right? I mean, I know there'll be EV stations and gas stations in the future, but today, so, I know you presented a photo that said yes and no, what the look would be. So I agree with the yes, and I agree with the, I agree with the no. But the request tonight is strictly the use, not the architectural of the building. Is that correct? Because we're not looking at any architecturals for the building.
I don't have any architecturals.
Okay.
So as I had said prior, I think that it should be an administrative approval so that it's reflective of what you imagine it to look like. But to get down architectural details, we don't have any. I tried my best to give you an idea of what it might look like.
All right. And then I guess back to the self-serve nature of the facility. Across the street, you have KinderCare, then you got a couple hotels. You might not be able to answer it, but I got to ask, is it a 24-hour operation? Because I don't need to see anybody. If I'm just going to charge, can I go there at 2 a.m, or is it, the pumps are only on, or the stations are only on this time? I know we're going to a self-serve type operation with a lot of different things, but I mean, do you envision this, and maybe the gentleman talk about what they do in UK, is it a 24-hour operation and because you're just doing it yourself, or?
Well, I don't think it's self-serve in the sense that there's not an attendant. I mean, the convenience store, that's one of the benefits there is somebody might need help and everything. So it's not self-serve as in completely like autonomous, go do your thing. The other thing about the convenience store, somebody's got to sweep the snow off the thing, and there's a management role to it. It's self-serve on I-95 because it's 2 units. I mean, they're sitting in the back corner. So that's the other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's also, the convenience store is also where the attendant. So it's still not self-serve in terms of, nobody's plugging it in for you. But the intent is, yes, there would be an attendant on that. So the person's just not serving coffee. They're also paying attention to the facility, calling operations, making sure everything's safe, the lights are on. Now, in terms of
in terms of business hours, I don't know, because again, I don't know what each company's, without naming companies, there's a multitude of them out there. I don't know what their business model is. So I don't know. I can't commit to that.
But the nature of the business is, 91's fairly quiet at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
I mean, it just not make sense to keep the lights on. It's a business.
Right.
And that's
Right.
where, a lot of gas stations will stay open 24 hours if they have enough business. A lot of the convenience store is probably the busier part out there. If you take that away from it, it's going to be kind of sleepy at anything, and it just may not make sense to have it staffed at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And because I guess just again trying to understand, I have no choice but to compare it to getting gas at BJ's. I pull in front of behind somebody. I wait for them to fill and go. Where do you wait? If it was so popular, how do I know who's next? Like, how do I know what spot's going to open up? Like, because it's a large number, or you always have to look for an open. In that rare occasion, like, is there an idea conceptually to how you would
There
know
is a row of parking on the far side.
Yep.
That is, once again, that free over. But I think, as Dave indicated, when you're waiting for gas, it's only going to be 2 minutes, right? You're in the BJ.
You hope.
Or you hope until the BJ card doesn't work and you're like yelling at the person. But even if you go to Costco, there's an attendant there, right? They're making sure it's self-serve, but they're still making sure everything's safe. The reality is you're not going to wait 20 minutes. And my understanding is there's a lot of technology, I believe, even with Tesla, they'll tell you what the wait time is in advance, where the location is, and they'll guide you to that location
Yep.
and say, don't go there because there's already 5. And then I think there's even technology that if it's taken too long, they shut you down and you only get a half a tank. And you're waiting for the next guy. So these cars are
Did not know
really
that.
smart grid, and to the point where they know where to go, as opposed to you and I pull up and find out all the pumps are out of order, and you have to go to the next one. So the technology is there to tell you where to go.
All right. Thank you. I'm old school, so I appreciate
I know,
that.
so am I.
I appreciate. I just
only 'cause
learned. I just learned something on
No,
that. Thank
only
you.
because the person
Yeah.
next to me in my office drives to Buffalo, and he has to tell me how he has to get to Buffalo through. And
Sure.
I think the technology does tell you where to go, when to go, what the peak rate. I mean, they're smart cars. They're, you know.
All right. Well, and if I could, just to Mr. Chairman, last comment. Conceptually, I get the traffic. I think the traffic information presented supports the usage that you're proposing. I think, it is not, it is different. It is, as I said, it's a potentially busy corner of 68 on a very busy road. You have the benefit of a traffic signal, and you're across from a child care center with 2 hotels. So it's not, Miles Drive is not Route 5. So I think conceptually, sometimes we talk, I think the location here, based upon what you're presenting to me on paper, looks like it would work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Mr. Allenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm that other commissioner. So to answer Commissioner Fitzsimmons' questions, yes, there is tiered pricing. Yes, there's, depending on which company you're going to charge with, they have an app. They will tell you the price of it at the time. Sometimes the price per kilowatt hour may vary during time of day, especially on the Jersey Turnpike, but sometimes it does not. I can tell you, in all the driving that I've done with my EV, it's where I am and where I can get to, and is it a convenient place to stop. If it's a 2-cent difference per kilowatt hour, it's negligible. It's not worth me going out of the way to do anything like that. I've had my car charge in under 20 minutes. Go in, have a sandwich, sit down, use the restroom, go out, and I'm back on the road. Run the card, it takes the card. At the certain brand stations, the car will actually have your card saved, so it even knows it through the charger. It's brilliant technology. If a car is not charging fast enough, it will shut down, or if you try to max out where it requires a slower charge, or you've been there for a longer period of time, it will charge you a higher rate. So you either have to say, I'm going to pay more to stay here, or I got to go. So it's really interesting in how it works. And this model seems to make sense to what I've done in my travels. I do have a couple of more technical questions, but I hope that helps. Okay. So one is on the traffic study. First, I have to commend you for doing 3 different traffic studies. That's just impressive. I did have a question about the coefficient used when you went from gas and then you tapered down to EV. Was that coefficient based on the number of EVs versus gas vehicles on market, or how did you get to that coefficient?
So we took the differential in time. So we took, for instance, when we did traffic study number 2, I'll call it, we started with an 8-pump gas station, or 8 vehicle fueling positions, and then considered that a normal gas station, not a super gas station, not a mom and pop gas station, and then said because the time could be anywhere from 4 to 6 times as long, let's cut that in 4. So normal gas station divided by 4, and that gave us our second level. And when we did the third one, we did it the opposite. We said, okay, 38 EV stations let's divide that by the 30 minutes, or 30 divided by 5 or 6, which brought us down to about 7, between 6 and 7 vehicle fueling position gas station. So the first one, if you do the math, it's kind of like a gas station with 2 pumps versus a gas station with 7 or 8 pumps. And in both cases, they had convenience stores. So that was the theory behind it.
Thank you. I know it's uncharted, so that's,
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious how you
That
built
is,
out.
and you know, I do, you know, I got a good client who doesn't mind us going back to get the full picture here, because we understand it's a new use, and you know, we're treading our own water on these things too. So it gives me a comfort level to know that I can do a 4X, a 2X, and an X, even though we think it'll be X, between X and 2X, but we feel comfortable that we analyzed a 4X.
Thank you. I did have a question about the center. Would you envision Wi-Fi and like a business kind of center for people maybe meeting somebody else, or to pop their laptop out and do a half hour's worth of email there?
I'm glad you came up with the new definition, center. Well, the convenience location, we imagine Wi-Fi and all the technology that is available for people that need to stay there for 20 minutes. A meeting center, the facility is not really that big. To have additional people meet, it won't be that comfortable or private. So it's only 3,000 square feet max. It's very small compared to other convenience centers.
I guess I may have mixed my words.
No.
You know, in the library, they have those little like cubicle desks that are like, they have a divider and like they face each other, but it's like a little almost mini workstation kind of space. That's kind of what I'm wondering.
Not people meeting, like where you can
like
have,
a little mini desk. Like,
that's a brilliant idea.
you're welcome.
But I think there could be a counter, like Starbucks, where they have a, counter and everybody kind of works on a laptop as they're having a cup of coffee. I mean, there's outdoor patio. You'd be able to work out there and on a nice day. So, but probably not to be honest, in the UK, they do have some of those more robust workstations, but they're much bigger buildings, and they have like a second story where you can go upstairs and work for a bit. But that's not what really we're envisioning here.
Okay, because I'm trying to
Yeah.
break it in my mind a little bit, and I'm thinking a little bit of like virtual office space versus a stop along the road. And I think that it's more of a stop along the road, based on what you're telling me, than a virtual office space.
You know, I don't have a Tesla, I have a Subaru, but up at Quality Subaru, when I'm getting my service done, they have a nice counter and their Wi-Fi. There's probably 4 or 5 spaces there that you could, what I do is I bring my laptop and I do a couple hours work while it's in there. So I could see it being very similar to that.
Thank you. One other question that I had was, you had talked about, since there's not a tenant yet, you don't know how much it's going to be built out. And since there's not an EV tenant, I know you're asking for 38 stations.
There may be less.
So that's the max, but
Correct.
a tenant may come in and say, hey, we want to build 6 and see how it goes. And it's just for the plan, not for the build.
I asked our engineers to give us, I like working in worst-case scenarios. That's what we did with the traffic study, and that's what we did with the site plan. Largest possible building, as many EV charging stations, plus the waiting parking. I think there's 1 per every 2 charging stations.
Something like that.
Yeah, so we anticipated that there is a waiting area for that vehicle that might want to stay there, so they're not parking on Miles Drive. Kevin actually suggested that, so we incorporated it in the plan.
And I think when we did some earlier concepts on this, the way we laid this out, it can be phased easily. You could build, half the canopy and just build the second half at a later day once the market kind of built up. So that was one of the things Liz asked me to, is come up with a plan that can be phased over time. Yes, but this would be the maximum build out. And because the remaining area is solely dedicated to meet your standard on stormwater, so I really can't expand it anymore.
Thank you. I may have some final questions, but I'm going to hold them until after the public talks.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parent, you had some questions, is that correct?
One more comment. I saw the map and everything like that, so I just drove out. And to see what it would be like, just have to go in there. If you're coming from east to west, you have the protected light. I did find I had to wait through, I think it was 2 cycles to get in there, and there's very little traffic. I did go down the road and found out it's a rear entrance to Anthem Blue Cross, and so I'm wondering if that was taken into consideration when at least some people will be going to go in the morning, come out in the afternoon. I found that going out, it's a piece of cake. There's no protected lights. It's only Northrop Road. Take a right, and took a right, and I had no problem proceeding easterly. So where you have it is, it seems like the thing would work. It seems like I need electricity from the van, take a left, and go right in there, get it, and come out and be on my way. That was, but my only thing is, did you take into consideration the people leaving Anthem Blue Cross coming in during the day and going home in the evening?
Yeah, the traffic counts were made during the morning peak hour and the afternoon peak hour. So whatever activity was back there was captured.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commission members? Yes, Mr. Sanders.
So I wanted to loop back to Commissioner Cohen's questions on fire suppression. That was really the primary thing that I was looking at with the site plans, is wondering where that was included. And Liz, I appreciate that you work in worst case scenarios and that you want to set the standard. And would you be okay with, regardless of what regulations Connecticut may or may not have, EVs have a different fire suppression need than petrol, gasoline vehicles, and requiring that even prior to really building plans, that any tenant coming in that's part of their plan, is the safety of the people there, the safety of the employees, and the safety of the community, and installing fire suppression system that's capable of being a first response for any EV fires. Again, just being safe about it. I was expect that at many gas stations, they rarely, if ever, need to activate that. But it's there for a reason, and we don't want to wait till there's a problem to then have the state come in and add regulations. So with all of that said, my question would you be okay requiring that fire suppression isn't a maybe to be determined later, it needs to be part of it?
So I don't know the building code for this. I try to be open-minded about everything. I would assume from a liability point of view, any company that came in to lease this space, install the charging stations, would want it to be safe for the clients. I don't know enough about it to commit to something right now, Mr. Sanders. I don't even know what they do at gas stations. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of it. So that would be a question for the architect. And I think that the fire marshal takes into consideration, and especially because this is a new use, I'm sure he would, if he believed it was required, would make that a stipulation in approving the architectural plans.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way and was surprised that there wasn't anything in more detail and didn't have a chance to ask him either, so.
Yeah. I'm sorry I can't give you a commitment right now, but I don't know enough about it to do that. It would be irresponsible of me.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Pagini, any comments on the application before I go out to the public?
No further comments. The fire marshal didn't elaborate any further on the suppression system, so I think if it was a concern, I think he would have, knowing the fire marshal. And I guess just expanding more on the welcome center concept, I guess it was just trying to find the balance between, a full-on convenience store and then possibly like a welcome center that you'd see off a throughway that only provides like smaller items, retail kinds of things. So kind of hard to describe, but hopefully we understand that now, and I don't have any further comments.
Ida, before we go out to the public, just a couple quick comments as far as, the height of the building versus the height of the canopies. How high would you propose? I know, again, you don't have the building that's been a plan for the building, but what would you perhaps envision the height of the building, and then also the height of the canopies?
I have no idea. The height of the canopies, I would imagine 14 feet, 10 to 14 feet.
Yeah, I think somewhere around 14 feet.
So generally, they wouldn't be higher than the building, is that?
No.
That's fair to
Absolutely
say?
not. And the building height, I think there is a maximum building height in
40 feet,
Wallingford.
40 feet in the reg, but we're only proposing a one-story building.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wasn't concerned.
Yeah.
I was just looking at from the height of the building certainly being higher than the height of the
Yeah,
canopy.
no.
So
Oh,
you-
okay.
Yeah,
So when you look at it,
I think it's more attractive to build a building with a high pitch,
yeah,
No,
I would
and
agree.
you put some type of architectural detail on that roof. However, I don't know exactly what it would be, but it would be below 40 feet.
And the height of the canopy on a lot of gas stations is because the gas truck has to get underneath it. We don't have that, so they can be much lower.
okay. All right, again, this is a public hearing. Are there any members of the, yes,
Before you go out to the public.
absolutely.
Can I just follow up on the
Sure.
fire marshal thing? Because I dug out his comments, and yes, this is written, and this will be a condition of approval. He does state that fire protection system plans shall be submitted to his office for review prior to construction. So I think we do have that covered.
I thought I read it somewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Cohan. That being said, again, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public who would like to speak on the application, please come forward with your name and address and your comments. And just if I could see a show of hands as far as the number of people who would like to comment. I believe we have just one gentleman, so sir, you'll be our first and last. Sounds like a pizza place, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It certainly does. Bob DeMayo, Murray Lane. I appreciate, first of all, I think this will be a good use. My one concern is traffic, like all of you, many have talked about, and I appreciate worst case scenario, looking at worst case scenarios. I do think it's hard to know what the worst case scenario really is, if we're honest with ourselves, right? I mean, it's new, it's brand new, we have no idea. 20 minutes could be 10 minutes, 10 years from now for charging time. No one really knows. And so I know that's not going to be 5 years from now, but it could be 15 or 20. And I worry that we don't have any protections if that happens, if it turns into a BJ's. Again, I think the use makes sense, but how can we protect, is there some sort of condition? I don't know enough about regs and what you can and can't do, but it would just be really unfortunate to have a situation develop 20 years from now. People say, what were they thinking? This is crazy, this whole intersection. I don't know that the site would even be able to handle, to Mr. Fitzsimmons' point, if it's a 10-minute charge time. Let's say that happens in 10 years. I don't know. Where would they queue? And I know you can't deal in hypotheticals technically, but best available information. I don't know what you would do in that situation as charging times improve, get faster. Are they forced to change anything? Do they just back out are they out onto Miles Drive? So I don't know what can be done. I would really ask if you think about some sort of condition that allows you guys to have some way to get, if something changes down the road. And again, it could be 20 years from now. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, I don't see any other members of the public that would like to comment. Bring it back to first, I just would ask Mr. Pagini, you've heard some comments from the gentleman from the public. Any thoughts, any insight from you, and then perhaps from the applicant as far as the comments that were made?
I think I'd like to hear the applicant's response first before I could make any determination on that.
I wish I could predict what would happen 20 years from now, but I can't. And I think it's putting a burden on the applicant, our company, to plan for something that's going to happen 20 years from now. I don't know what we could do today to predict something that is going to happen. Wallingford Police is in charge of traffic and public safety. That's an enforcement tool. The state of Connecticut is in charge of Route 68. That's something that could be looked at if they feel the intersection is dangerous in any way. The town of Wallingford has a right-of-way on each side of Miles Drive. So there are things that could be done, but to commit to something now for 20 years from now, I think it's a burden on the applicant. So that's my opinion.
My initial thought is that if there's charging stations that could be done in half or a third of the time, this place is going to be out of business. That's the first thing. And they would have to come to replace their equipment. So they would be probably back here again unless it was, some loophole they found to just put more efficient equipment in. The second thing is, we talked about this before a little bit. This is all market driven. And, if we just think about gas stations, they all, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they were 2 or 3 pumps. There was a kid out there and, you rolled down your window and he clicked it and then you give him a credit card and he walked inside. And, they've gotten more efficient. But the market has adjusted to those. The more efficient ones are in locations that can handle the more efficient traffic and the higher traffic generation. This facility is being designed for what it's being designed for. And I think we have factors of safety in there that are more than adequate for this facility. So I think, we have that, and we have enough belt and suspenders with DOT, with the police department, and of course with your zoning enforcement. So those things are all in place.
Thank you. And again, Mr. Pagini, any thoughts?
No, I think that's a good point. I think, if you want it to be as safe with a condition of approval, maybe put something to the effect of if the charging stations get replaced with a faster charge, maybe we can come back to the commission or notification to the town, something to that effect. Because right now we're talking about, 20-minute charge times. So if they do come out with something, say 10 years down the road, that is a 5-minute charge time, then maybe that's something we could look at, but I can't think of anything else.
Ms. Vernon.
So then I asked the commission, if a gas pump pumps faster, are you going to make every gas station come before this commission? If a coffee maker brews coffee faster, are you going to make Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks come before this commission? I think that placing that burden on the applicant is unfair, and I think that if someone is leasing the space and they feel that they want to put in a more efficient charger, not necessarily for speed, but it could be for efficiency, or it could be because it looks better. I don't think they should have to come before a planning and zoning commission to get that approved. I think this is based on a site plan approval, and if you're going to do it for this application, then you have to consider all the other applications that have retail and service. And that's just my point.
Thank you. Any commission members, any further comments? Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, last meeting when we approved the Dunkin' Donuts at the old Duchess restaurant, I mean, this exact scenario came up where, everybody was concerned about, the increased traffic over there. And basically the fire chief, police chief, the traffic control engineer said that if the situation warrants it, they will address the issue when it occurs. So, honestly, I think that's where this is. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Cohen. I think it's an interesting point to be brought up. What happens if the charging time decreases? How would that, impact this as far as traffic? But to some degree, I don't know how you really address that. And I would suspect in 10 or 20 years from now, this won't be the only charging station, probably in this town. I think it may be safe to say that you're going to see some of the existing gas stations may start to transition to some degree toward a charging station. Certainly, it's not going to be, 30 chargers, but it may be, who knows, 4 or 5, something along that line. So, my general sense is that in 10 or 20 years, there's going to be a lot more alternatives out there for people to come and charge their vehicles. And again, this won't be the only one. So I understand it's a possible concern, but and the other point that the applicant brought out that we have it's a state road. Certainly, the state, our police department is not going to allow people to park on the road. There's on Miles Drive, that's a town road. Certainly, if you find people out there, you can certainly put up no parking. There's ways to, I think, to enforce that. So it doesn't develop a situation where you find people that are queuing on the road. And again, from the way Mr. Allison described how charging stations work, certainly that was, and the information you can get as far as the times and all of that, I can only think that in 10 or 20 years from now, that's going to develop even more as far as the technology to make people much more aware where they can charge, how quickly they can charge. So, at least from my perspective, that isn't an issue. The one issue that I brought up as far as we've gone from now a welcome center to a convenience store to a convenience center. I guess I'm just, in my mind, I'm very cautious about that as far as what it develops into. But I like the idea as far as from an architectural standpoint. I understand the building's not going to be that big. The architectural standpoint that it's going to be something of your yes column, not your no column. The fact that it's going to face it's going to face 68. So it's going to have a positive, at least in my mind, a positive appearance. But anyone else before I take? Yes, Mr. Allison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really quick, I do want to thank Mr. DeMeo for his comments. It was very interesting, and in a perfect world, I think that it would be feasible. I don't know how we can do that under our regs and under the law to make it fair to the applicant. I know the applicant came up with a bunch of examples, but, if somebody opens a burger store and they make really good burgers and get rated in the top 2 in the country, their traffic's going to change. And then that burger store is going to say, we need to change our ingress and egress and our layout and our wait staff and our building, and then they'd be back here. My thought is that if the chargers became much faster, the building, the welcome center, convenience center, whatever you want to call it, would want to be bigger. The traffic direction would want to change, and the applicant would be back here for that. The shape and size of it is definitely going to dictate. As far as technology is concerned, I hate to bring this up, but AI is becoming involved in everything. And what it's doing is it's taking data from a bunch of different sources and saying, based on what you're asking me, this is the best plan. So in 5 or 10 years, my car is going to tell me, you're going to pay $2 more, but drive 20 minutes less. You want to drive less, you're paying $2 more. Or you drive 20 minutes more and you save $2. Those are your choices. I think that's where we're going technologically speaking. So I don't see an issue here with it. I think it's very well thought out. I like the location. I think that ends what I got to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Again, any other commission members? Any final comments before I close the public hearing from the applicant? Not that you need to. Mr. Pacini, any final comments from you? Okay, that being said, at this point in time, I've entertained a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move we close the public hearing on the application for 1 Miles Drive.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, now I'll entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, based upon the totality of the information presented, I move the commission approve the special permit request and site plan approval to construct an electric vehicle charging facility and accessory retail building on plans entitled Proposed Electric Vehicle Charging Facility dated May 7th, 2024, revised to June 3rd, 2024, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, comments from the Town of Wallingford Senior Engineer of Water and Sewer Scott Shipman dated June 6, 2024. Number 2, comments from the town of Wallingford Town Engineer Allison Kopinski dated June 6, 2024 and June 10th, 2024. Number 3, comments from the Town of Wallingford Fire Marshal dated 5/17/2024, including construction documents, including building plans, shall be submitted to the Fire Marshal's office for review prior to construction, and also fire protection system plans, if necessary, shall be submitted to the Fire Marshal's office for review prior to construction. Condition number 4, comments from the environmental planner, Aaron O'Hare, dated June 6, 2024. Number 5, that the accessory retail building is approved at a later time by the Planning and Zoning Commission with full architectural plans that are consistent with existing architectural features of the district. The proposed building shall incorporate a convenience center concept. This approval must occur before a certificate of occupancy is issued for the property. Number 6, an erosion and sediment control bond in the amount posted of $10,500. And number 7, 6 copies of the final plans forwarded to the Town of Wallingford Planning and Zoning Office.
Do we have a motion on the application? Any discussion? If none, is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, the application's been approved. Have a good evening and
Thank you very much.
have a good luck with your project.
Thank you.
It brings us to our next item on our agenda, item number 2, site plan approval. It's a site plan, above-ground tank farm for Rome America, Inc., Ryan Putnam, 258 South Cherry Street. If the applicant would please come forward to begin preparing for their presentation. And with that, Mr. Allenson, would you please note all correspondence for the record?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Interdepartmental comments from Department of Engineering, I believe it's Allison Kapuscinski, dated 6/4/24. Wallingford Fire Department inspection report, inspection date 5/21/24. Interdepartmental comments from the Electric Division, Marigore, dated 5/17/2024. Sorry. Interoffice memorandum from Scott Shipman, Senior Engineer, to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated May 31st, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. And if the applicant could please introduce themselves and begin their presentation, please.
David Rodriguez, responsible for process safety, emergency response, and security.
Ryan Putnam, Engineering and Maintenance
Thank you.
Manager.
Oh, we got it up there.
Just introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Cliff Barone. I'm a consultant for Rome America, professional engineer, and I work for a company called Chemtech.
Mr. Chairman, Commission, just a brief background overview of our facility. So we are located at 5...
Sure, if you just please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry.
If you please introduce yourself.
Sure. Dave Rodriguez, responsible for process safety and emergency response at the facility.
Thank you.
We're located at 528 South Cherry Street, at the end of South Cherry Street. We're co-located on the Allnex facility. So of the 250-acre site, we occupy approximately 10 acres. Our portion of the site is the northeast corner of the facility, so we are bordered by the railroad track to the east, and surrounded by Allnex property otherwise. We're a leading manufacturer in acrylic and acrylic-based multi-polymer compounds, global company with facilities in Europe, Asia, and throughout the Americas. The site began operation in 1941 as American Cyanamid. It's had different owners throughout the years. So we are currently Rome America LLC, a German-based company. Our finished products are plastic pellets. We take raw materials, we react them, we make polymer, extrude them, and it's feedstock for critical supply chains on the medical side, the automotive, and the food industry. The medical market is incredible for us. It's one-time use. The requirements for sterilization, lipid resistance, irradiation, alcohol resistant, all the properties that we have to meet are substantial. And so we have a unique market share. And so we've been successful over the years with maintaining that market share. And this project is critical to our raw material supply. Our medical markets are infusion therapy, blood filters, IVs, catheters, PICC lines, lures, inhalers, anything one-time use in a medical setting, whether it's a surgery center, a doctor's office, or a hospital, we're in that space. And here you can see, again, IVs, lab filters, catheters, IV accessories. Again, the main component is that our plastic is able to be sterilized, both with alcohol wipes, irradiation, or otherwise, and it meets all the FDA requirements for lipid resistance and other factors. Our secondary market is automotive. So there's a tremendous amount of plastic in cars: headlights, taillights, trim pieces, pillars on the inside of motor vehicles, the dashboard. So they may appear to be wood inlay, but essentially they're plastic. The instrument panels, everything underneath the dashboard that you don't see, the HVAC ductwork, all of that is plastic. It's lightweight, it's durable, it provides the weight and the structural integrity, provides gas mileage, gas efficiency for vehicles, so that's why there's so much plastic.
So just an introduction of myself again, Ryan Putnam, engineering and maintenance manager at the site and also project manager for this project. We just wanted to give you a little bit of background on Rome at first so you guys kind of understand what we did at the site. Talking about this project specifically, we have underground storage tank systems that hold all of the raw materials to make the pellets used for all of these products. These 10 tanks were installed in 2 phases. First phase was done November of 1994, the second phase, September of 1996. And because these tanks were built underground, because of a statute here in Connecticut, they must be permanently closed when the life expectancy of the underground tanks has been met. In this case, the manufacturer warranted them for 30 years, so after 30 years they must be removed out of service and replaced with a new tank farm. And then just another note, there's no extensions given by the state on that timeline. Summary of what this project looks like. So we have a new combined tank farm. It's constructed north of our main production buildings, and it's also including associated pipe racks, platforming, electrical and mechanical utilities to all of the tanks. We also constructed a new fire protection system for this new tank farm as well. And then we also put in a new unloading platform so that we could offload the raw materials into these tanks. And these new tanks, rather than being underground, have been brought above ground, so we're no longer held by that statute. And then the old underground storage tanks that are there, they will be removed and the land will be reclaimed with no planned future use currently. So if we're looking at the site, this is an overview of 528 South Cherry Street. It's kind of outlined in blue here. And then in this darker blue is Rome's leased property on the site. And then you can kind of see there in black where this tank farm is located on our leased property. So north is up on this drawing, and then Route 5 would be to the east, and our main entrance is right in this area here at the end of 528 South Cherry Street. Then a little overview, kind of zooming in a little bit more from that. This is what our site looks like currently with the tank farm in construction. We did a site survey. The site survey here shows the as-built of the tank farm currently as it sits in location to our buildings as well as our property lines. And then moving in a little bit further, this kind of gives you some scale setbacks from our property lines and our leased property lines. So we're approximately 200 feet from any of our property lines, with an additional about 130 feet from our property line to Route 5 over the train tracks that are there currently. Then getting into some specifics about the tank farm itself. So as I mentioned, we're doing this work in 2 separate phases. Phase 1 is outlined here in blue. Those are the first tanks that are due this year in 2024 that were installed in 1994. The lighter shaded blue, kind of to the east, those are the current tanks that are currently underground and will be removed as part of this project. So one important thing to note here is we're actually moving them away from our property line and further away from Route 5 here. And then the 6 tanks that you see here in kind of the reddish color, those are the tanks for phase 2 that are due up in 2026. And those are a little bit south of this building 38 we have marked here as well.
So if you could help me out, I'm just looking, when you mentioned the lighter shade of blue,
Yes.
Could you identify, when I'm looking at it,
Yes.
I'm having a tough time distinguishing which is the
Yes,
which
yes.
is the lighter shade.
Yeah, the lighter shade is here on the east. It's this here, if I circle it on the screen. The 3 that are just north of building 38.
And I know what the problem was. I was looking at the wrong page.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Thank you.
Yep. And then getting into the specifics of the tank farm itself. So a new containment area was built. This is about 127 feet by 92 feet with 2-foot walls going all the way around to contain the tank farm. Tanks in blue color here, again, these are the tanks that are already installed as part of phase 1, and then 6 future tanks as part of phase 2. All of these tanks have platforming that sits on top of them so that we have access to the top of the tanks so that we can maintain them. We also have new steel structures, some new pipe racking coming from our production building, and then one extending across the center of this containment area that will bring over some existing utility that we have. Then we also have a new unloading station that's stalled just to the east over in this section here. And this is how we will be offloading the raw materials as we receive them. We'll be receiving those in tank wagons. We're not making any changes to the existing rail where we do receive some of our materials. We're just extending some of the utility over to our tanks and using the existing railroads. The containment area itself will have a ramp entrance up and down as well as platform crossovers to our unloading station and out of the containment area as well. Also part of it is a new fire protection system which will be installed around the entirety of the tank farm. This is a PFAS-free foam system. A new foam shed is built in the northwest corner of the tank farm, and that will house a tank that will hold the chemical. And should it ever be needed, there's an actuator that will release and send the foam to the system. So it's a normally dry system that will only operate if needed. So that's a general overview of the work being done. And then finally here we have an elevation that shows kind of some scale as to what the tank farm looks like. This building over here on the left is one of our main production buildings. This is a new pipe rack that comes over and feeds this new tank farm. About 27-foot clearance from the bottom of the steel to grade, and then 40 feet wide, so plenty of space to still get underneath the pipe rack and have access to the tank farm if needed. And then you can also see, as far as these tanks go, the platforming that we've done. It's pretty extensive where you have access to all of these tanks. And then the new unloading station as well. You have new platforming here to access the top of the tank wagons to do our offloading activities. So that's all we have now as a general overview for the project. Any questions, please feel free to ask.
Good, thank you. Commission members with questions for the applicant. Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you. I'm going to be very simple with my question.
Mm-hmm.
You've already done this.
Phase 1, correct.
All right. How come you didn't know you had to come to the town?
So my understanding is in the past we fell under the Department of Labor, and we have been that way for some period of time. For this project specifically, we invited the fire marshal out to look at the fire alarm system, and as he came out and inspected, he made us aware of the fact that we should be contacting planning and zoning to go through the proper channels. So ever since he contacted us, we've come here to try to right the wrong and get back into compliance and going forward doing what we need to do to.
Just to be clear, because I think you're no different sometimes than an applicant that comes in and says, I built an accessory apartment, I didn't know I need approval.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you here, is there other things that have happened at the site that require planning and zoning approval besides the tank farm?
In the past, however many years?
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to, just think about it only because
Yep.
you're not the federal government, and we're only local planning and zoning, but obviously, other than the railroad and the federal government, everyone really comes before us. And so when I was reading this, I'm thinking, it says, the fire marshal basically said you should go get approval. So I'm just thinking, I know the facility, I know the company.
Right.
You've been in Wallingford forever, but I just don't know if there are other things out there that could have, should have been reviewed by the town. And it's just a general comment because,
Yeah.
For
I don't know.
our footprint, we haven't done a lot with regards to building new structures. Most of it's been done under existing roof. So the original Rome buildings were built in the 1950s and 60s, and most of what we've done has been under those roofs.
Okay.
Yes.
And I just want to give you a chance to
Yes.
explain, only
Yep.
because, so we're not requiring a bond, if I understand correctly.
Correct.
And I'm going to ask a real stupid question. Did they pay the application fee?
Yes, they pay the double application fee.
Okay, because it's after the fact, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then the only other thing is, do you require, or do we require, this is actually to the town planner, tanks coming out is not a zoning approval. Like when you have to remove the tanks at the end of 24 and 26, that's not before us, correct?
Correct, yes.
Right. But
But we're working with the fire marshal on that.
Correct.
Yeah.
He has to be.
Good job.
Yes.
But is this fully done, or phase one is done, and you're requesting approval for everything after the fact?
Phase 1 is done.
Yes.
All right, so will this also include phase two approval, what you're
Correct.
asking for tonight?
Correct.
Okay. You've answered my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Other commission members? Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow on with Mr. Fitzsimmons' line of questioning, so, our notes say that, the operations manager said that you're always governed by federal regulations. So my question is, what did the federal authorities do for you? I mean, when you were doing this, was somebody on site inspecting, what you were doing? Were your plans approved by, some federal agency? How did those regulations get validated while you were going through this?
So that was largely driven by the insurance, our insurers. So third-party auditors, third-party insurers came on site and had to approve, including this project. That gets approved through our risk management managers and insurers.
During your construction or deconstruction, reconstruction, how often were they on site, looking at, phases of what you were doing? I mean, was it one person? Was it, several folks? You say insurance, but it doesn't sound like the insurance is really, federal agency people.
They're not. But they hold us to a higher level, right? So if you look at our design and we have detailed drawings that we can present, I think you'll be, from a technical standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, we're held to a higher standard. And we did a complete site review before anything was excavated, before we did a concept and design review with our insurance, internal and external and third party.
I guess I'm not asking my question correctly. So they did that.
Correct.
But what goes back to the federal agency?
Nothing.
So the federal government gets nothing. You're relying on, your insurance.
Fall
folks
under
to-
OSHA, process safety management, and EPA risk management plan. So we have to meet those federal requirements. We get audited by EPA and DEEP and OSHA. So those requirements are federal requirements that we fall under and we're required to follow. We've passed all audits, scheduled, unscheduled, otherwise.
Okay, I think I did get my question answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brevard.
Thank you. And I recognize I'm new to this. And I also recognize this is kind of ex post facto, what we're doing here, which is interesting. But two questions about the difference between the existing and the new. It looks to me, but it could be I'm incorrect, that you've upsized the volumetric containment here to some extent from the base, which is okay. What's actually contained in these? And you mentioned you're subject to DEP, which is good. I assume there's a state requirement that you have to meet inspections. I'm familiar with industrial zones in my work. Is there a particular regulatory requirement for how these type holding tanks for whatever might be held in these are approved and meeting? You say you're held to a higher standard. What is the standard you're exceeding so that this body has some confidence in a standard exists and someone's overseeing that, separate from the company itself who retains their own insurance companies?
So there are API codes that we have to follow for fabrication of vessels. These are atmospheric vessels, so we follow the code for API code for fabrication. So they're all certified, tested, and stamped vessels. Code stamped vessels.
And what's contained in them, and is it upsized from the existing?
So we have monomers. In most of the vessels. We also have toluene, which is our solvent that carries the polymer stream through the process. It's devolatilized, it's distilled and reclaimed, and we put it back into the polymer stream. We reuse it. We put that back into the polymer stream.
Thank you. And one follow-up question. The existing tanks, when they're removed, is there any remediation that's required at the site based on those tanks being old and in place historically, potentially containing toluene, which is a material of concern?
We're required to do soil analysis once the tanks are pulled, and that gets reviewed by a third party and also by DEEP. So that'll be followed up on for sure.
And just to be clear, the tanks that are in the ground are all double-walled tanks with an interstitial that's monitored. So if there were ever to be any leaks in that tank, we would know about it and it would be contained. And then if that were to happen, we have to take the tank out of service immediately. So we don't expect it.
Thank you.
The regulation was intended, 30-year regulation was intended for gas stations, single-walled tanks. Ours are double-walled.
Yep.
Thank you. Other commission members? Mr. Allenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really two questions. So forget what was done. It's just for my own simple brain right now. Your application says that some of the tanks have to be permanently closed by 2024 and others by 2026.
Yep.
That also means that, from the way I read it, that you can't pull those tanks out and put new tanks into the ground in those existing spots. Is that what you're telling us?
No, that was a financial decision.
Yes.
Installing them above ground will allow us to keep them there and monitor them forever.
Okay.
So essentially, we're not subject to the 30-year rule by moving them to above ground.
So either way, you got to do new tanks, but you could put them back in the ground
Could.
or
Could, yes.
put them above ground.
Yep.
Okay, then whether we approve or deny tonight doesn't stop you from continuing on in business. It's just financially more inconvenient. Does that sound about right, based on what you're telling me?
No, we're up against a deadline, and so we have to, the underground tanks have to be decommissioned for 3 this year?
3 this year by November 1st, yes.
By November 1st,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so for at least those 3, it would be an extreme hardship.
Yes,
Tell them. Okay,
Yes.
that's where I'm going with this.
yes.
Then I just have a question for Mr. Pagini. Mr. Pagini, if this application was for some reason denied and everything, what would the next steps from the town be?
The site would just be in violation until they would get an approval for it, but it's
it would
already
go-
built, so I don't know how.
So it would go to legal through the usual violation procedures.
Usual channels.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commission members? Seeing none, Mr. Pagini, any comments?
I think we were just concerned about, it meeting local regulations, safety. Wetlands also reviewed it too. I believe they had some other elements that they took out as part of this approval. So, no, I'm glad they came and they were responsive. So, I have no further comments.
Okay, thank you. I guess my only comment, I think other commission member, I appreciate Mr. Cohen's comments because I was trying to figure out just when you said you have to comply with federal regulations, just what you had to do
Right.
and not do. But anyways, I appreciate you folks finally coming forward with that. But I realize that was generated from the town. But one of the good things coming about that is your operation manager now, I think, should be aware that while you may be governed by federal regulations, you also have to comply with local regulations. So, going forward, with additional projects you may or may not have, certainly you folks are aware of that, and I'm confident that in the future you'll recognize that and come forward to seek the proper approvals. So if there's no further comments from any commission members, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the site plan approval request to construct a above-ground tank farm at an existing chemical manufacturing facility on plans entitled New Tank Farm, Rome America LLC, dated May 10th, 2024, subject to the following. Number one, comments from the Town of Wallingford Water and Sewer Division Senior Engineer Scott Shipman, dated May 31st, 2024. Number two, comments from the Office of the Wallingford Fire Marshal, dated May 21st, 2024. Number three, that any future site plans or modifications are submitted to the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Office for Commission for review prior to any activity. And number four, 6 copies of the final plans forwarded to the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Office.
Thank you. We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cohen, voting beginning with Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
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 And yes, the application's been approved, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. Brings us to our next item of business. It's 824 section, or regulation, if you would. The first one is proposed sewer lateral replacement project at Gaylord Hospital. Again, Mr. Allison, if you please note all correspondence for the record, while the applicant will be coming forward shortly to begin their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an interdepartment memorandum from Peter Hornick, engineer, to Kevin Pagini, town planner, dated April 26, 2024. We have a memorandum from Aaron O'Hare, environmental planner, to Kevin Pagini, town planner, dated June 6, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. And again, if the applicant would please address himself and begin his presentation.
Hello, I'm Scott Shipman, Senior Engineer, Water and Sewer. Nice to meet everybody. I hear my name
There really
bandied
is a
about.
Scott Shipman. Wow.
Yes, and I draw the crowds too. So I don't know what you guys want to see. I'll just give you a quick overview.
We'd like just really an overview of the application and what's being proposed, sir.
Sure. So the first proposal
Yeah, the microphone, please.
The first proposal is a sewer lateral replacement for Gaylord Hospital. Gaylord Hospital is located off-site here. Their current lateral goes across here and goes out to the ridges. It's old, obsolete. It gets a lot of water inflow and infiltration during storms. Our general manager, Neil Amlake, likes to say we have a whole day at the sewer plant dedicated to Gaylord's water inflow problem. So we have an agreement with Gaylord where they're going to replace their lateral. They're going to bring it down here to Harnish Lane. As part of that project, we are going to extend the public sewer to the end of Harnish Lane and into this section, this plot of land here, which is actually owned by the town of Wallingford. So this section will be new public sewer, and whenever you extend the public sewer, you have to do one of these 824 applications. So that's the reason for this application. It's about 120 feet of new sewer.
Sure. What's the timeline for its completion?
This is currently out to bid right now. It just was posted on Friday. It's about 30 days for the bid and about 2 months for completion of the work.
Good. Thank you. Commission members with questions for the applicant. Yes, Mr. Rivard.
With the extension in Harnish Lane, are there any new residences that the public sewer would gain potential access to, and have they been notified if they wanted to tie in?
No, so the houses there in Harnish Lane are already tied into the sewer. There is this section that the town owns is actually a future road right-of-way, so in the future that could be used, but there's no plans at the moment that I know of.
Okay, so all existing homes are already tied in. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other commission members? Mr. Pagini, any comments on the application?
No comments.
With that, seeing how this is your first time here, you can, there's no one here, the meeting's all yours. You can take as much time as you'd like.
I'm all set.
There you go.
I have more things to say. We've got another one on the list here.
That's fine. At this point in time, I entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I move that according to Connecticut General Statute 8-24, the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the request for the Town of Wallingford Water and Sewer Division for a proposed sewer line replacement at Gaylord Hospital because it's consistent with the plans of the Town of Wallingford Water and Sewer Department.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. Voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes, that application's been approved. Brings us to the next 824, and that is a sewer main replacement project, North Turnpike Road at the intersection of Ridgeland Road. Again, Mr. Allison, please note all correspondence for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Inter-office memorandum from Scott Shipman, Senior Engineer, to Kevin Pagini, Town Planner, dated May 24th, 2024, with an enclosed plan of development, I guess. That is all.
Thank you. And again, sir, if you'd please just reintroduce yourself and give a brief overview of what's being requested.
Scott Shipman, Senior Engineer, Wallingford Water and Sewer. This is a project taking place on North Turnpike Road at Ridgeland Road. The sewer, it's a little hard to see here, but there's two sewers that come together, sewer mains into this manhole here. The flow dynamics are very bad. In this manhole, it twirls around. They call it a washing machine. So this project is to run some new sewer main here parallel so that the main coming up North Turnpike turns over to the off-road sewer on its own path, separate from the one coming down Ridgeland Road, which will clean up this flow and just simplify this flow profile. Again, this is about 120 to 130 feet of new sewer, parallel to what's existing and connecting to an existing sewer.
Thank you. Commission members, any questions? Seeing none, again, Mr. Pagini, any comments?
No comments.
Okay. At this point in time, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Commission approve, according to Connecticut General Statute 8-24, a request for the Town of Wallingford Water and Sewer Division for a proposed sewer line replacement on North Turnpike Road because it's consistent with the Town of Wallingford Water and Sewer Division plans to upgrade.
Do we have a motion on the application? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, voting beginning with Mr. Cohan.
Yes.
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 And yes, the application's been approved. Thank you very much for presenting this evening. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Pagini, we'll turn the rest of the meeting over to you.
Administrative approvals, any questions on those? March ZBA decisions, don't believe.
I don't believe we,
That must have been May.
yeah, I don't
ZBAs.
believe we received that in our packet.
No, that must have been May. Apologize for that. And, let's see, and legal
It
notice.
wouldn't have been May because the May one was canceled.
Oh, so yeah, we didn't, I thought we had reviewed March though before, but it could be. So I guess we'll skip that for now. Legal notice for next week's ZBA meeting. Any questions?
Anybody have any comments, questions on the ZBA agenda for next month? All right, that being said, I think that unless you have any final comments, Mr. Pagini, I think that brings us to the close of our meeting, and at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, all in favor? Any opposed, any abstentions? Meeting's adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.